moving on to the Notre Dame Miami situation. And BYU is the big cog in this. BYU is a pretty big cog in this thing anyway, because if they win, I think we both agree that Texas Tech is relatively safe. Now, if BYU was to maybe win by 40 or something, maybe there's but I just don't see that as a realistic possibility. 14-point dogs don't often go out and win by 40 on neutral sites. Not saying it can't happen, but outside of something truly wild happening, Texas Tech feels like a lock. There feels like there's one spot left, right? Bama feels pretty locked in. We talked about that in our first segment, which we'll link at the end if you want to go back and watch it. But Bama feels like they're in. Everybody ahead of Bama doesn't play, or it's the number 1 and number 2 team. Like Georgia, Indiana, and Ohio State, obviously not getting dropped out no matter what. So there's one spot left. And the team in 10th, because there's either going to be an ACC rep or a group of 5 rep, or an ACC and group of 5 or 2 group of 5 reps, there will be one spot left. If BYU loses to Texas Tech, and let's say they don't cover the spread, they lose by 14, which it's 13.5 right now, if I remember correctly. They lose by 14. The committee drops them by a spot. Is the committee bold enough to put Notre Dame at 10 and Miami at 11? Like when they would be, I think you can get away.
If that happens,
you ignore the head-to-head right now because you can say, oh, well, in this group, you're third best of this group. But could you really ignore when they're stacked on top of each other? I don't have any idea that the committee could really do that.
They can't. They cannot. They can't do that. Like that. It would be one thing if Notre Dame's wins were demonstrably better than Miami's wins. Like if they were both 10-2 and Notre Dame went on and beat, Ohio State or somebody like somebody in the, somebody that's ranked above USC at 16. Like if they beat some team that was clearly in the field, that would be a different conversation. But these resumes are not different enough for that. Yeah. And I mean, like the flip side of this, dude, is that they got to end up next to each other no matter what, because BYU is either going to lose or win. But if they lose, I guess it's the same conversation of will they punish BYU for losing to a team that they already lost to? And does it really it wouldn't matter at that point because BYU's out no matter what. But I'm not sure, man. I'm really not. It almost feels like they rolled this dice putting BYU there as a buffer, because then you don't have to have the true head-to-head conversation on Notre Dame and Miami. But, BYU's got a game, and so the result of that game has to move BYU up or down. There's only one team ever in the history of the entire college football playoff that lost a game and didn't move, and that was TCU in
conference championship
2010.
But I guess the precedent for that is it was the same conference championship. So
it was, but TCU had already beaten Kansas State earlier in the year.
A little bit different,
and that was overtime game. So it's just if they're gonna do it, then okay, I guess.
So it feels to me like Miami is still alive based on the result of that BYU game. Now, I'll say this. I don't think teams should be penalized. And we talked about this with Georgia again in the first segment. I don't think teams really should be penalized for losing a conference championship in the way of falling out.
No.
But I also if BYU goes out and loses by 3, covers the spread by 11, loses by 3.
I would almost say that makes them, that it gives them a better case.
Yeah, I don't really know that they should be dropped in that situation.
Well, right now where they sit, they're out of this thing no matter what, right? Because we gotta move the, we gotta move the G5,
the charity cases,
or the ACC, right? And so the question becomes, if they lost to Texas Tech in a close game, and we really think this highly of Texas Tech, where they're a top 4 team in the country, do you move BYU over Notre Dame? They would never do it because it's Notre Dame.
No, not for a loss. Just before we go on, I will remind you that all of our content is brought to you by Sleeper this year. We appreciate Sleeper for their support and hope that you are using their app with the code CFA for a 100% match up to $100. Make sure you check their terms and conditions because terms of use do apply. Make some money with us live on Wednesday on the Power 2 here on College Football Addiction when we pick the more or less games.
But if we're really, we got to break this. We've got to break the. I know. I'm not saying winning and losing doesn't matter. It does. That's the whole point. But like, we've got to stop this fucking counting losses thing, man.
Yeah.
Excuse my language. I'm sorry, but like, we've got to get past these binary constructs of, hey, you know, you lost, so you're bad. And you won, so you're good. Because when we're talking about like this finite of a difference between these teams, and we're talking about a Notre Dame team that, again, has not beaten anybody.
If this would be different if Notre Dame had wins against, there have been years where Notre Dame had wins against Clemson and Florida State.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Really good USC teams. And if Florida State and Clemson were on their schedule and both ranked incredibly highly, or even just top 25 is fine. If you had 3 top 25 wins and 1 loss to a really good Miami team, that is different, right? And then a good A&M team too. Like, that is very different. They don't have as good of wins as Miami. They don't have the head-to-head with Miami. Their strength of record is like 1 better. Their strength of schedule is 2 better. They're like, there's no... their logo is better. I get it. It's the biggest logo in the sport. You know, I understand that. It is Notre Dame. We make movies. And yes, I understand that. They have a great helmet. And I do not want to be the guy sitting here in the Florida State shirt defending Miami. But like, what is Notre Dame's case to be ahead of Miami?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't. I would say that Notre Dame's case to be ahead of Miami is that they lost less recently. I don't know. They don't have one, and that's the problem.
And the better loss. But better wins should mean more to me. You should not be able to use a better loss as the. That's the only. I will say that Notre Dame's losses are better than Miami's losses. There's no doubt, and I'm not hating on Miami's losses. I don't think there is like
one of their losses is to Miami.
Right, that's the problem. You can't use they have better losses. Dude, they lost to the team you're talking about. Like, this isn't that Miami lost to a 5-7 Florida State team and Notre Dame lost to Michigan or Ohio State or Texas or something like that. They lost to the team you're talking about. And again, This was fine. You remember this, it was 5 weeks ago. I was on this train, and many people were, when Miami was 18 and Notre Dame was 10 or 11, when they were 8 spots behind them. But at least then I could wrap my head around the logic of, now I didn't think that Miami was 8 spots worse than Notre Dame, but I could wrap my head around the logic of, head to head doesn't matter if you're a third of the bracket down. Like, it doesn't.
We talked.
I can at least agree with the committee on that. Yeah. But I still didn't think Miami was 8 spots worse. I just could understand. Head to head doesn't matter. Like, the same reason head to head doesn't matter with Florida State and Bama. They're not, it's the same idea there. But now that they're right next to each other, there's no way you can get to next Sunday and BYU gets blown out or whatever. Now what'll be funny is BYU will win, eliminating both of them, and then they'll rank Miami ahead of Notre Dame. They'll be 11th and 12th. Yeah, and they'll both be out.
That is exactly. That would be so poetic. And
dude,
if they get to the end of this thing and they really do leave Miami behind Notre Dame, and what really pisses me off about it is that I can get behind the fact that, I want a committee doing this that is not going to look at this in the traditional way. And they're not going to just group teams by losses. The problem is that, you can't follow the old paradigms across the board, except for right here, and say, just in this one instance, head to head doesn't matter. When, by the way, we moved 3-loss Texas up over 2-loss Vanderbilt because they've got a win over Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
There's got to be some congruence between, the middle of the rankings and the top of the rankings and the bottom of the rankings and the methodology that was created to get the whole thing. So I would hope that this will solve itself in the end and Miami will be ahead of Notre Dame, and there will be not necessarily a mea culpa, but just like hey, when we started this process, Miami was playing bad. They had just come off a couple of losses in a few weeks, and we didn't think they were that good. And as the season played out, the resumes of these two teams ended up being very close, and one beat the other.
Yeah. BYU loses. What's your guess here? We predicted the other one. What happens with Bama, and then BYU loses by 14 plus and drops. Who gets the 10th spot? What prediction? Not like what should happen. We're both in agreement that Miami deserves it.
I think they give it to Notre Dame.
I think, and maybe I'm just trying to reverse jinx this as an FSU fan, I actually think that if they're right on top of each other, I think they're going to give it to Miami. I mean, nothing the committee has done so far. I just can't wrap my head around them not doing that. I can't wrap my head around them not doing what I think is right, although they've proved me in the past that they don't give a shit about that. But my thought is that they do end up giving it to Miami. We'll see.